Have you ever noticed how a heart breaks in silence? Not with the crash of great tragedies, but with the dry click of a door that will never open again. For a long time, I didn't realize I was carrying pieces of myself inside locked boxes, forgotten in the attic of my own soul. They were small things. A smile I never returned, a letter I never answered, a hug I kept for later. All of it piled up like dust on old furniture, until one day when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the reflection. There was something missing in my eyes, as if they were gazing at a horizon that would never arrive. That's when I understood. It wasn't life that had grown distant from me. It was I who had stepped away from it. And in the hollow of that realization, a whisper, almost imperceptible, invited me to begin again. Invited. He walked as if he didn't want to leave footprints on the earth. His back straight, his pace slow, and a strange ability to become almost invisible in a crowd. Not because he wished to hide, but because he no longer had the strength to be noticed. In his hands he carried an old coat, not for warmth, but to remember someone who once wrapped him in a hug so long it felt eternal. There was a weight on his shoulders that came not from bags or suitcases, but from stories he had never told anyone. The nights were long, filled with conversations that existed only in his mind, with faces time had already taken away. At dawn the world resumed its noise, but inside him there was a thick, almost solid silence that kept him from moving through the hours with lightness. And yet, there was something about him. Perhaps the way he watched leaves falling, or the way he took his time to return a glance, that hinted a thin thread of hope still hid somewhere deep within. It was on a cold, windy morning that he found the object. It wasn't precious or striking, just a small wooden box, scarred and stained as if it had passed through many hands before arriving here. It leaned against the leg of an old bench in the square where he often sat to watch life pass without being part of it. When he touched it, he realized it wasn't locked, but for some reason, he didn't want to open it right away. There was something about the box that seemed to look back at him, as if it knew the name he hadn't spoken in years. The wood felt warm, and its scent reminded him of a closed room where someone had stored memories too fragile for the light. He placed it on his lap, watching people walk by, and suddenly time seemed to slow, as if the box were a portal to a place where nothing had to be explained, only felt. Sitting there, the box between his hands, he felt the weight of the decision. To open it meant confronting whatever was inside, and perhaps confronting himself. He stared at the lid, feeling the wind slip through his fingers, carrying with it the distant smell of freshly baked bread from nearby bakeries, as if the city kept living, indifferent to his dilemma. The world moved, but inside him there was a still lake, and every possible motion seemed capable of stirring waves that could drown old certainties. He thought of leaving, of placing the box back where he had found it, pretending he had never seen it, as if by doing so, he could also avoid seeing what lay behind his own silence. But his hands refused, as though they had made a secret pact with the wood. He didn't know if it was fear or a calling, but his breath slowed, and the sounds around him faded until there was only the steady, insistent beat of his own heart. Waiting for an answer, he still lacked the courage to give. When he finally lifted the lid, he found no jewels, letters, or photographs, and only 5 small objects. So simple they could easily have been mistaken for trash. A smooth, pale stone, a faded blue cloth, a key with no lock, a wooden button, and a white feather. He touched each one as if tracing the surface of an invisible map, and without knowing how, he felt that each carried a fragment of himself lost along the way. The stone returned the safe weight of being home. The cloth brought the scent of a distant summer. The key recalled doors he had never dared to open. The button spoke of clothes that once warmed someone beloved. And the feather felt far too light to belong to this world. There was no logical explanation, but seeing them all together in the palm of his hand, he realized they weren't just things. They were traces of a life still pulsing within him, asking to be taken back. He placed the 5 objects back into the box, but didn't shut it tightly. He left the lid resting lightly as if allowing air to flow freely, so nothing inside would turn into a prison. He rose from the bench with a firmer step than when he had arrived and felt that somehow, the box wasn't an extra weight but a quiet center holding him whole. As he walked through the streets, he noticed things he had overlooked before. The rhythmic tap of a distant hammer, the golden reflection of the sun in the windows, the brief laughter of a child running with a balloon. Everything seemed stitched together by an invisible thread he could now see. The box pressed to his chest wasn't just a chance find. It was a living reminder that parts of him were still waiting to be cared for. And with each step, he felt less like a spectator and more like a participant in the world around him. On the last night of that week, he didn't open the box. He simply placed his hand on the lid and stayed there, still feeling that everything he needed was inside, alive, waiting. He smiled to himself, realizing that his heart hadn't returned to what it was. It had become something new, more whole precisely because it held its scars. Before sleeping, he lit a candle and set it beside the box, watching the flame sway as if breathing with him. "What is cared for remains," he whispered. Then he let the candle burn to the end, in silence. If your chest carries a weight tonight, do this. Choose an object that represents something still alive within you. Place it on a table, light a candle beside it, and breathe with it for 5 minutes. And if this story has touched something in you, share your own box in the comments. Leave your gesture of presence with a like, and subscribe so we can walk together into the next chapters.